As we live throughout these perilous times that we live through, have you ever heard the rumors that the earth may be sick? That we become such a bad species that the earth is trying to get rid of us, rid itself of its problem. Throughout the world currently, as I speak, we're experiencing famine, disease, and the storms that we are engaging with are becoming stronger and stronger. Now, this theory is nothing new. It's been portrayed in books, movie, and TV. One of the movies in particular was Kingsman: The Secret Service. Now, when it comes to the rumor that the earth may be sick and trying to get rid of us, I don't know how to think about that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I try to think logical. But then I run across cases like these, and it truly makes me think. Because once you hear this story, you'll realize just how people are, and the things that they'll do for something so small, turning a small problem into a big catastrophe. December 28th, 1993. The world would make way for Taylor Benz. She would be born in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to her mother, Nikita Colvin, and her father, Kelly Benz. Shortly after birth, the family would transition to Nashville, Tennessee, where they would live in the Antioch area. A young Taylor is described as a child who was loving, energetic, a child who was curious about her surroundings. Like most girls in their childhood years, she enjoyed playing dress-up, listening to music, hanging out with friends. She was also a loving and caring big sister. Antioch would also be the place where she would receive her education. She would go from elementary to middle school before finally landing at Antioch High School. While in school, she was known as the girl with the knack for fashion, someone with a bright smile. With her bubbly personality, she quickly garnered the attention of others, and making friends was easy. While in school, she would excel in a number of activities. She ran track, she played the violin, and she also performed ballet. By the year of 2012, she would be preparing to say goodbye to her teenage years, to usher in the beginning of her adulthood. That would be the year she would graduate. By the time Taylor graduated, she was known as a free spirit, so going to college right away wasn't in her plans, although she did have future plans to choose a career. But for now, she was just being herself, living life and enjoying her time. 3 years after graduation, Taylor would be blessed with a baby girl, and upon her birth, she would become Taylor's entire existence. Taylor enjoyed being a mother, and she was also a very hard worker, so she did everything she could to take care of her. Fast forward to the year of 2018, Taylor has now relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where she's known by the people around her as a good friend, the charismatic girl who had your back. While there, she would be working in the entertainment industry, as well as doing side modeling. But by now, she has chosen a career choice. She was currently enrolled to become a real estate agent. Being the people person she was, that was the perfect career choice. Becoming a real estate agent was something she was thinking about for a period of time. This was something she felt like could provide a better life for her daughter. But sadly, before this could come to pass, a tragedy would occur. A tragedy that would strip a daughter of her mother, but also a loving sibling from her family. Tuesday, July 24th, 2018. The DeKalb County Sheriff's Office would be dispatched to an apartment complex. The location was on Hit Lake Trail right off of Rockbridge Road, right outside of a place called Stone Mountain. The authorities would arrive on the scene at around 7 a.m., where they would find a female unresponsive. The female would be transported to the local hospital. However, before arriving, she would be pronounced deceased. When the authorities initially arrived, they were responding to a call about an altercation, but this has now been upgraded to a homicide investigation. The victim in question would later be identified as then 24-year-old Taylor Benz. After learning that the victim had tragically passed away, the authorities would begin the investigation. Since this was an apartment complex, there were obviously going to be witnesses, so they would begin going door to door, questioning people about the events. It wouldn't be long before the authorities would be given a suspect, then 37-year-old Jason Leroy Brown. Witnesses would detail that on that day, Jason arrived and he was angry. The onlookers would testify that after he arrived, he would begin arguing with Taylor about a missing watch. But during this argument, he would begin to beat her. Then he would drag her down the stairs onto the street. At some point during this attack, Taylor Benz would suffer a seizure, and as a result of this, she would lose her life. Now armed with the suspect, the authorities would put out a bolo on Jason, but shortly afterwards, he would turn himself in. The hard part of finding the culprit is now over, and Leroy Brown is now set for pretrial. His court date would finally arrive, and upon arrival, he would plead not guilty to the charges of murder. During this pretrial hearing, the prosecution would press for no bail, but the judge would deny this motion, and he would set bail at $125,000. At the time of his arrest, Jason Brown was a business owner, so floating the roughly $12,000 he needed to get out was no problem, and he would eventually make bail. Meanwhile, while Leroy is getting his affairs in order, the family would be preparing a funeral. They would anxiously wait as the body of Taylor Benz is transported from the area of Atlanta, Georgia, back home to Antioch, Tennessee. Once Taylor Benz had arrived home, they would have the funeral service, and anyone and everyone who had the privilege of knowing her would attend this ceremony. Although the funeral was a heartfelt moment, there was still one big elephant in the room: the word justice, and whether or not they were going to receive it. But little did the family know that this would be an uphill battle. The next court date would be set for the year of 2019. During the time that they're waiting on this court trial to begin, the mother of Taylor Benz is now taking care of her daughter, a daughter who is a spitting image of her mother. And every time they gaze into her eyes, they're reminded about the tragedy. The court date would come and go, but during this time, the defense team is playing games, postponing court dates, and drawing out the situation. Over time, the case begins to lose its momentum. The case would then take a sudden turn. It was no longer the defense drawing out the case. It was now the prosecution putting off court dates. This would continue on into the year of 2020, and we all know what happened that year. Due to the state of the world dealing with the big problem, the court date would once more be postponed. Taylor Benz was especially close with her mother. During the course of the court proceedings, Nikita Colvin was constantly calling the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office looking for any update. She was also pressing the court system for a faster trial. But due to COVID, that trial date wouldn't come for another couple of years. The year of 2020 would say farewell and greet the beginning of a new year, 2021. And sadly, on January 19th of 2021, the mother of Taylor Benz, Nikita Colvin, would pass away. She would leave this earth before ever knowing the outcome of her daughter's case. So, like deja vu, the family would gather once again to put her mother in the ground. The daughter of Taylor Beans is once again forced to move with another relative after another tragic death. More time would elapse, and then finally, the court date would arrive. October 2022. The prosecution team would make their opening statements. They would face the jury and lay out the details that on the day of July 24th of 2018, Taylor Beans was attacked. They would lay out their theory of her losing her life behind a watch, but they would also reference the autopsy report. In the report, it would detail that Taylor Beans suffered damage to a vertebral artery. The vertebral artery is an artery that supplies oxygen to both the brain and the spine. And it's important to note that if you have any type of disruption with this artery, it can lead to a seizure. And there are a number of ways that you could lose your life during the complications. There could be heart problems, brain function problems. There's also autonomic dysfunction. And the list only continues. With the prosecution opening statements now concluded, it was time for the defense. And they would remain on their stance that Jason Leroy Brown was not guilty on all charges. It would be a short trial. They would merely tell their side of the story and then rest so the jury could make their decision. When the trial initially began, Leroy Brown was facing 3 separate murder charges and an aggravated assault. During the trial proceedings, 2 of those cases were dismissed, and he was only facing 1 charge of felony murder. In layman's terms, that means that someone lost their life, but you did not intend to harm them. He was also facing 1 count of assault. So the jury goes to deliberate. But during this court proceeding, as I stated, the case had lost momentum. The witnesses that had pointed out Leroy Brown on that day were no longer willing to go to court and testify on what they saw. So this now leads the prosecution to nothing but an autopsy report and a theory. And that makes this case 10 times harder to prosecute, because the autopsy report showed that she lost her life due to complications from a damaged vertebral artery. And without them classifying the autopsy as cause of death homicide, it threw a fork in the road. October 27th, 2022. This is the day of reckoning. The judge would tell the courtroom, "All rise." Jason Leroy Brown has sweaty palms. He's anxious, ready to know his outcome. The jury would stand up and read their verdict. As to count 1, felony murder, the jury finds the defendant not guilty.
Oh, how it goes in this stubborn town.
As to count 2, aggravated assault, the jury finds the defendant not guilty, but guilty of a lesser charge, a charge of simple assault, a mere misdemeanor. As we live throughout these perilous times that we live through, have you ever heard the rumors that the earth may be sick, that we become such a bad species that the earth is trying to get rid of us?
Next tonight, Hurricane Helene, now the deadliest hurricane since Katrina. More than 200 people now confirmed dead, hundreds still unaccounted for.
Say something, anything.
We're experiencing famine, disease.
Do something.
And the storms that we are engaging with are becoming stronger and stronger. The judge would turn to the jury and ask them, "Is this unanimous?" And they would all say yes. He would then move on to the sentencing phase. Jason Leroy Brown would receive a whopping 60 days in the county jail followed up by probation. But as I mentioned, he did spend a little time in jail. And county jail is day for day, so that 60 days quickly turns into 30. And since he was processed in for a whole month, he was basically given time served and immediately set free. Jason Brown still maintains that he is innocent and that he never harmed Taylor Benz, despite the fact they had witnesses that ID'd him. But in the end, a witness that won't come forward and talk is a useless witness, and this is now considered hearsay. Taylor Benz now rests inside of her funeral plot, alongside of her mother. A mother who anxiously waited for the outcome of her daughter's trial, only to pass before it even came. You have heard the saying that everything happens for a reason. Maybe this was a part of Nikita Colvin's plan of life, that she shouldn't be here to see her daughter not receive justice. Because if she was here to see the final outcome, she may have died from a broken heart. What happened to 24-year-old Taylor Benz is heartbreaking. To go through that situation, allegedly over a watch, and lose her life it's astounding. But then for the family to have to watch the only suspect walk free of those charges is even more heartbreaking. I'm not here to pass judgment, because judgment has been passed. A jury decided that he was not guilty. He has served his time and is now a free man. Was it lack of evidence? Or was it just the mere conscience of a jury not wanting to put a man away without enough evidence? Or maybe it was the fact that a seizure was involved, which in this case could be misconstrued as natural cause. But in the end, we'll never know, because the case is now closed. Taylor Benz is resting along with her mother, and the final word has been spoken. Rest in peace, Taylor Benz. Thank you for being a light for others.